Welcome back to episode 11 of Oneself. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartleman. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Steven, as always.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, no, I love it. Before we hopped on, we were touching upon um, insecurity, loneliness, these universal human experiences that everyone feels, right? And there's been a loneliness I've felt probably for my entire life, and especially when it comes to on this healing journey of trying to get better, like trying to unlearn and relearn. The loneliness has almost morphed into something different. And it's not a loneliness of just alone. It's like a loneliness of like, oh, like there's so few people around me that are talking about these sorts of things as well.
Mm,
And that's in some ways for me, that's really scary. That's why I value you so much, right? Because it's like you give me such a great outlet to talk about these sorts of things of like trying to get better. And when most people go their entire lives without addressing any of it, without addressing any trauma, without addressing any internal work that they need to do, without talking to people about it. And yeah, man. So I just want to touch upon these two big topics. Um, and when it comes to insecurity too, right? Um, and again, what does it always come back to? Like self-love, right? Like if you can love yourself enough, that loneliness kind of eases. That insecurity kind of eases, right? Where it's just like to love this body. And when it comes to insecurity, that's been a journey for me as well. We had this story earlier in our episodes where, I was talking about my lessons going to the eye doctor, growing up being born
mm,
half blind and just yeah, like hating my eyes and morphing to a place where trying to love my eyes and coming to a place where I'm okay with my eyes and love my eyes for the gifts that they have given me, um which is all these other gifts, right? It's like when you hear people who have like dyslexia but they have fantastic verbal memories, and
mm.
they might go on and become a successful lawyer and like they have a transcript in their head of like what the defendant says and they can trap them, or like my condition gave me some gifts too, right? Like this adaptability, this way to do things. So it's again focusing less on the insecurity and what I don't have, and loving it anyways, right? And loving it for the things that it has provided me, which I think is perspective, ironically, because it's not, it doesn't give me physical vision, but it's giving me, a shift in a mental perspective, which is an ability to see in a way, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, man, those are my two jumping off points for today. Um, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they really go hand in hand, like insecurity and loneliness, right? If we have more self-love, then that takes care of both of those things, right? Because we recognize that we're already made perfect. And we also recognize that we're never truly alone when we're really connected with the deepest part of ourselves. We start to connect to something much, much greater than just the individual sense of self, the ego self. So it really takes care of both of those concepts. So that's why it's a great place to focus our attention. And, as we always say, it always comes back to self-love.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And people watching is a favorite pastime of mine, right? If I'm at the airport, I told you I
Yeah.
was at a concert last night. Um, I really love people watching. And and when I see people moving, it's just yeah, it's the same patterns, right? Like I see the loneliness on people's faces. I see the insecurity on people's faces. especially for the younger crowd, like, when people get a little bit older, maybe they get a little more comfortable in their bodies, a little more relaxed, and they're just it's life, right? I'm just moving through it, but especially with the younger crowd, man, the insecurity is on their sleeves, I feel like,
Yeah.
for a lot of the time. And and what do words do? Like, words are powerful, right? When I inject if I give someone a compliment, be like, "Hey, like, I really like that outfit," or "I really like something about you." um, it lights them up, so it's
Mhm.
like I'm showing some love, I'm injecting some love into them, and it just lights them up because I know they're having those thoughts, and especially as a child, man, too, I really admired the people that were just free, that were just like super self-assured, or maybe they came off as super self-assured or super confident, and I've always tried to, even today, like I'm trying to mirror that every day, and to come back towards that, and because authenticity, I think, and we were talking about this last episode, right? Like staying true to yourself. And I sent you that thing this week where it's like authenticity to yourself is just like the highest vibration, right? And
Yeah.
so like when you incorporate all these things, right? Not easy to do that. All these things, the self-love and this authenticity and all that. But when I see people truly living it, they just seem free. And those are role models for me. It's just like, man, I want to be like that. Like I had a buddy of mine, and his career, he works a lot with celebrities, right? And some people, he's like, they're whatever, like they're fine. You know what I mean? They might not have that energy or charisma. But he mentioned that he met Alicia Keys once. And I love Alicia Keys, me, like as a pianist, like all that stuff, like just huge admirer of her. And he said that she was like, she had that presence, right? Just like so shamelessly herself, like no shame in her eyes, like would lock eye contact with you. Like she was just herself, right? Like, through and through. And so, yeah, like that's what I'm always trying to strive towards, I guess.
Yeah. And it's cool that, when we look at authenticity more closely, and I think it was mentioned in that clip that you sent me, is, self-love is authenticity. Like, being authentic is loving yourself. So, it's really all the same thing. And, those people who are fully embodying that, they really come off as free because they have shaken loose the constraints placed on them by this sick society, the ego constraints that have us falling into those easily observable patterns when we do sit there and people watch. Because, like you said, you start to recognize those patterns, and as we heal ourselves, as we love ourselves, and we become more authentic, we rise out of that space. We drop those shackles, and then we're far more easily able to recognize those patterns in other people. Not from a place of being drawn in by the feeling of it, like an empath, really like feeling the pain of someone else, but more so from a place of observance, just like, I don't need to get sucked into the feeling of that anymore, but I can see it. I can see that pattern very clearly. And this is how this journey of authenticity, one of the ways in which it really helps us move through the world in a more masterful way, because we just are not prone to falling into any of those traps anymore, because we recognize those patterns from far away, and showing up in such a way as we're discussing here, as I'm mentioning, is the recognizing the patterns in other people, like you said. So it's a really interesting journey. It's like, it comes with not only like feeling better about oneself and being centered and calm and happy, but it's like, wow, I get to really move through the world in this way where I get to avoid the pitfalls that I used to fall into when I was stuck in those, like, the patterns that you're observing in people outwardly. They're reflecting the pattern that is going on in their mind, the different patterns of insecure thought that many of us fall into because we've been programmed the same way through the same society. And when we free ourselves from that, we are just able to see again so clearly how it used to happen to us, and rest assured in the knowing that we're not gonna fall victim to that anymore, to ourselves, to allowing those mental patterns to kind of take control.
Yeah, man. I think I'm trying to think back to like where I even got started on this because always easier said than done, and so I'm just trying to imagine like what's the baby steps that I took or what were the baby steps that I took.
Okay,
Um
for like the start of your journey.
I think it was yeah, and I think I can kind of pinpoint it um mid 20s and just and I'm not there yet, right? Always working
Yeah,
towards it. But I
definitely.
think it was more just having the courage to step out of a relationship that wasn't serving me. Uh,
Yeah,
like it was just and again, I've mentioned this, right? Like not a bad person, they weren't a bad person, they're fine. It was just I felt that I was just being in a relationship just to be in a relationship, which I don't think it was fair to anybody
mhm,
in that. And so what was that being? That was me being inauthentic, right? Um not to myself, right? Not to that person, right? Like I was doing things that, still doing music and all these things that like I liked, right? But
mhm,
what was inauthentic, I felt like I was inauthentic. And this is all in hindsight, right? Like I'm not thinking these things in the moment. This is all like,
of
me
course, yeah,
reflecting.
yeah,
I wasn't that self-aware. But me leaving that relationship when I know that I've seen a lot of people that just like stay in it, you know, and
yeah,
stay in it for the duration. When I put myself forward for the first time for that relationship, I felt like that was more a step towards the path. And it's like I don't know why. Maybe I didn't do it earlier. Maybe I thought it was like selfish and like
yeah,
so here's my conclusions on relationships, right? Like before and then. I thought you had to like sacrifice for the relationship, right? Where now I recognize that you need to both be living cool lives and doing things for yourself and taking care of your own needs in order to come together and form that greater thing, right? And if you're not showing up for yourself in the relationship or you're putting that burden on your partner to feel like to feel the love, to feel the love or to fill that hole in your heart or whatever you need to work on, that's not a good recipe for a secure relationship or a healthy relationship. And I think, while I was in that one, it was like that's what I felt, right? And I've come to a different conclusion now, right? Where it's like no, like it's like I have to put myself um forward in the things that I care about and then, not that a relationship doesn't take like compromise or sacrifice. I'm not saying that, but you know, in order to fill your cup, you have to like do things that fill your cup in order to
mhm,
pour into that other person. And when I did that finally, when I left that relationship, um, that was the first step to me walking towards a more authentic self, more self-love, more of all that. Because I don't think I did in that period in my life. And and again, I've stumbled this past year, probably, I think. And yeah, turned 30 and I was like really, really trying to make a concerted effort to be so authentic to myself and what that means to me and and the self-love, man. Like I'm working on it, right? It's not perfect. Nothing's ever perfect.
mhm.
But I feel like for the first time perhaps in my life, and this is 30 years in, right? Kudos to the people that come to that conclusion before me. But I'm 3 decades on this planet and I've finally started to figure myself out. I feel like um and it feels good, and it's exciting, and it's scary, and the work continues.
Yeah, and that's completely reasonable to take, as long as we need, several decades, several decades more if necessary to figure that out, and to not judge that process, because we have to understand that we're undoing generations of programming. Generations of programming to think that relationships are about, uh, completely sacrificing yourself and giving into the needs of another. You know, that's that's what we've been modeled our entire lives from the people around us, as well as through all forms of media. Storybooks growing up, and movies and television shows. It's all a very toxic relationship model that has been shown to us. So it's really a magnificent thing to even begin to climb out of that hole that has been dug for us, and it's a beautiful thing. And it was similar for me. Starting the more focused path was finding myself in a relationship that was very toxic. Not putting that on the other person. That was just like the co-creation was very toxic. And then also finding myself in a very toxic workplace, as I've mentioned before. And it came for me through the recognition of patterns. We're mentioning patterns, and that's really what it came down to for me. It was just noticing patterns around me. For example, some of the people that I used to work with, who were a bit older than me, who I could observe were following the same patterns as everyone else. Toxic relationships, substance abuse issues, negative attitude, bullying behavior at work. And I was kinda looking at them and going like, "Whoa, that's basically me right now, so that's gonna be me in 10 or 15 years. If I don't make a change, then, that's exactly where I'm gonna be. I'm not going to evolve in this place at all." And, same thing for the relationship. Not to say that that place or that, those people that I've been in relationships with are like, are in a place themselves where they can't evolve. It was just, again, bringing it back to myself, not placing any blame on any one other person or former workplace. It was just for myself. I recognized that there is not going to be very much evolution for me left here, and that if I want to continue growing in a way that excites me more, it just has to. There has to be a change. There has to be a shift. And that's what I would recommend that people who are listening to this, who are, this is resonating for them at all. It's just taking an honest look at what is going on around you, what's going on in your life, and are there any patterns that you're noticing? Are there any red flags, so to speak? Um, like, does your relationship model look like any other relationships that you've observed throughout your life? And how are those relationships? How did they turn out? Same thing for people that are, people, that you're working with. Maybe look to the people who are a little older. Are they in a place where you want to be when you're that age? That kind of thing. So, it's an all important considerations.
Yeah, yeah, and there's something I noticed in my brain when all this is happening, the before and the after, right? Like, the before being authentic
Mm,
and the after, the before the self-love and the after. There was this pressure, this subconscious weight on my mind that it was almost like something telling me, like, this isn't you.
yeah.
This isn't you. And I can't explain it. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but in every period of my life where I've been doing something like that, there's this pressure, this weight on the back of my subconscious that's like, nope. And it's heavy, and it's heavy. And when I finally realign, the weight goes, phew, and I feel like I literally like it, I feel lighter emotionally, physically, my spirit, and it's happened to me several times where I'm like, not authentic, not authentic. Shoot, make a big change, or come back to myself, and it goes,
Yeah.
whew, and like the weight goes, and like I don't know what that phenomenon was. I don't know if that's universal. I don't know if other people experience that, but it's like again, we're talking about patterns. There's just been this consistent thing, and again, my North Star, right? And so like that's my internal North Star, where I don't know what's guiding that. Um, or me guiding that, what beyond guiding that, who knows, right? But I'm
One and the
listening to
same.
it, one and the
Yeah.
same, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I am that. That's me, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know what's but I'm listening. I'm listening
Yeah.
to it, and thus far it hasn't led me astray, and when I really just
Mhm.
try to focus on honoring that.
Yeah. And that's beautiful because, to me, from my perspective, that's when you're explaining that, that sounds like intuition, right? That sounds like that is your spirit that is pulling you toward your most aligned path because you're not at this place where you need to be uh, kind of milling through that level of karma anymore. You're done with that. So you're moving on to a new place. And that's the guide. That is the North Star. And for anyone for whom that sounds like a little bit too much or a little too out there, it doesn't really matter. The point is that your experience, the way you explain that, is really kind of perfect in my estimation because you're not needing to define it. You're saying, I don't know what it is, whether it's, it's like it's intuition, North Star, whatever that energy is. It's like you don't need to know what it is and define it. You just need to know that it's working for you. And that is something that you're figuring out through your own experience. Just listen to that feeling and see what happens. Follow that feeling and see what happens. If it doesn't work out, then okay, don't, maybe consider it a little differently next time. But when you have the repeated experience of this being something that's good, then you learn to listen to it, and then it's just like a muscle. You train it, you strengthen it, and it becomes more clear, more easily engaged, and and that's all you really need to know because people have been calling that by thousands of different names throughout the ages and defining it in slightly different ways, but ultimately it's coming down to that which is guiding us and that which we're all connected to if we're willing to listen. For those of us out there who are maybe saying, well, I don't feel that, I don't feel that, I don't hear that or see that, we can bring in practices to hone the awareness to be able to sit and to be able to listen to that and to be able to hear it. But ultimately it is there. I mean, that is my personal belief, is that what feels more like a personal knowing for me is that it is there, and that current, that undercurrent that is there that does want to pull you in a certain direction is in your highest, your is toward your highest timeline, is what is best for you, and then that is uh, actually what ends up being best for everyone. Again, because we're considering oneness when we're being most authentic, when we're loving ourselves and being in a state of complete self-love, loving ourselves, being in that, releasing all of the insecurity, I should say. That's when we are our most authentic selves. That is when we are most aligned and we feel that pull. And it always feels loving because it's always pulling us towards something that feels good and ends up working out. And that's the really cool thing, is that undercurrent that is pushing all of us really is this loving energy. It really is a positive, gentle, uplifting, lightening thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that people have been people, some people might be listening and just be like, "Yeah, dude, that's just intuition, you numbnut." Like it's
Yeah, but
very
that's a big
simple.
topic. It's a big
It's
it's
a
a
big
big thing.
topic,
Could
and
just could
yeah,
say it's just intuition, but yeah, it is, but it's also like, let's talk about what that is though.
what
You know,
is
like
it, right?
it's
Yeah.
exciting.
Right, no, absolutely, and yeah, and so it's like, now I've just really felt like I've been honoring that intuition, and I think discernment too is a part of that, 'cause what are we? We're people, right? And we're always engaging with people, and you always have to I'm trying to get better. Maybe before in the past, I was better at retroactively looking at an engagement and be like, "Oh, I didn't like that person," or "I didn't get a good feeling about that person," or "I got a
Mhm,
great feeling about that person," and I wanna see them more. And so, like, in the moment now, it's like, you shake someone's hand or, you look them in the eye. I'm really trying to focus on discernment, right?
mhm,
Because I don't think I was always good at that. I think some people have that natural gift of just, and I think, largely women are much better than men at this as well, just being like, "I
yes,
do not get a good feeling from that guy," um, or I do, right?
mhm,
And so, yeah, as trying to work on that as well, looping that into all these things, these big conversations when it comes to, listening to my intuition, not only for myself, but when it comes to other people as well.
mhm. Yeah, and it's a process because we've been, again, conditioned and raised in a society in which we've been taught to focus entirely on our minds, uh, and look from that perspective, but really we're trying to bring into harmony the heart and the mind, so the intuition and the discernment. Because as we're starting to expand on the intuition and listen to those feelings, sometimes we're just not clear on which voice is speaking, and whether it's a voice that's coming from a traumatized part that has a narrow view of things, which might feel good in certain cases, but really it's just like a response that has led us, like a survival mechanism response that has worked to give a feeling of safety in the past. It might feel like our intuition in the moment, but then late on upon later, looking at in retrospect, we see that maybe it wasn't as intuitive as we thought. But that's the whole thing, is that this process is a process of refinement. So we're looking at things, trying to be intuitive, but also using discernment, bringing those two together, really marrying the two as we get better at moving into this space of trusting ourselves, really, is what it comes down to, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think I did, in the
No,
past.
definitely not. Me
You
either.
know, I I
Yeah.
was never certain of myself. I was never clear on things. I was never There were things I did consistently, but yeah, when you live a life for other people, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust the intuition, you don't trust the discernment, and showing up for myself, fighting for myself probably allowed me to trust myself more because I know I have my back,
Yep.
and I know that I'll surround myself with people that also have my back, and that
Mhm.
also have, integrity and aren't gonna, try to sweep the rug out from under me in some way, shape, or form. Now, I can't
Yeah.
say that was true for the past.
Yeah, and the thing is, when we learn to trust our intuition some more, so, like, when we demonstrate to ourselves that we have our own back, then those parts, those survival mechanism parts of ego that show up in response to a perceived danger, originating in the past, those start to quiet down. Those start to come back into wholeness, and then we don't have so many voices in our minds competing for that attention, and we get better at being able to listen to the intuition. So this is where the whole being versus doing kind of conversation comes in, where sometimes you just have to choose to be an intuitive person and, like, just really put your faith in it, and then it'll kind of come out in the wash. Like, it'll start to work itself through as we refine that process. It takes some faith at the start. Like, this is a cool thing where there's really always room for faith in this process because a lot of the time we have to take that first step into the unknown before we're gonna find out that there was something there to land on. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it
Yeah,
there.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, 'cause when no one ever showed up for you, or you feel like no one, like, showed up for you, not that, like, people didn't show up for me in my life, but I never felt truly seen, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. To be truly seen by others, you know, do I have a relationship with family? Yes. Do I feel seen by them? Like, do they know? I think they have an idea of who Steven is,
yeah,
but I don't think that idea truly reflects who I am to myself.
yeah,
And so when you've never truly felt seen by anybody, including myself, I think it was really hard to step forward into that faith of
yeah,
like of because I never did it before and no one ever did it for me.
yeah,
And to be truly seen as who I am. And that's something, I don't know if I'll have kids, right? But if I do, that's something that I really want to make a priority of is just knowing my child for who they actually are, or knowing people for who they actually are. And I think that's why friendships are so important, and
yeah,
good friendships, because whereas family, I mean, if you have a family, siblings or parents that truly see you for who you are, that's a lucky gift. But what are friends? The family that we choose, right? And so for when it comes to me for friends, and like when I think of some of like these really special friendships in my life, it's because they see me, and ideally vice versa. Like they know what I'm about, they know where my priorities lie, where my values lie, who I am, and they celebrate it. And ideally vice versa, right? I see them, I celebrate them, I love them,
yeah.
right? And yeah, man, I think a lot of people walk through the world, walk through life without ever truly seeing themselves and having themselves be seen by someone else.
Yes, and in order to be seen by other people, we have to see ourselves first, right? This is the part that's kind of tricky for the ego sometimes, right? Because it doesn't, there's a lot of paradox and dichotomy in this whole journey, and to bring it back to the example of you wanting to have a child see themselves, so you wanna if you wanna give a child the experience of having parents that see them, well, then those parents need to be able to see themselves, because we cannot give to anyone else what we don't already have. We can sometimes backdoor that situation for ourselves in if we cannot find the ability to see ourselves, which is a false belief, but if that belief is existing in there, we can kind of take a shortcut by helping others to see themselves, which again, this is very paradoxical, but sometimes these things have to support each other from either side. um but ultimately, like, if coming back to the conversation of the raising a child, if we want to set ourselves up in the future for having a kid that's going to feel seen, and then we have to work now on ourselves and seeing ourselves. So because how else are you going to teach that, right? And when we have these the very common experience, the very unfortunately shared experience of not feeling seen by our families, and we come into the world feeling kind of victimized, right? Like, I didn't feel seen as a kid, and it led to all these negative behaviors and supposedly negative outcomes, right? If we're looking in the more focused sense. But ultimately, we have to see that if we want to change that, if we want to break that pattern and be, the better example for the next generation, then we have to do the heavy lifting in that sense, in that experience, and kind of just own it and accept the fact that we weren't taught that, but we had to figure it out ourselves, and then often model it and teach it to the people who, you could argue should have taught it to us in the first place, our parents, which is, a bit of a tough pill to swallow for the ego at times, because the ego wants to say that things were unfair and play the victim. But, ultimately, that's how as far as I can see, that's how it works. We really gotta, put on our big boy and big girl pants and just really understand that it comes down to us, and sometimes we have to end up, parenting the parents in that example anyway. But, yeah, man, how does that sit?
Well, it comes back to what we get pushback on,
Mm,
which is accountability. I think that, and we didn't realize that going into this, right? Going into this beautiful endeavor that is oneself. Um, but the lack of accountability that I see in a lot of people as men too, like we see it rampant in men, as because we can only speak from experience, had no idea that it was rampant in men. And I get it. I was there too, like in my in my younger 20s, like probably still, a little like the victim mentality. But where does
mhm,
the buck stop? Like it has to stop with us,
yeah,
especially if you're, creating future generations with someone and with a healthy, self-esteem and healthy upbringing and all that stuff. And so accountability, man, like it's just, and like we say, like you have to come at it with love. It's like don't be mad or hateful towards yourself, and be like, you should have done this or you should have done. It's like no, it's like come at those because that's how my brain was wired a while ago, right?
yeah, yeah.
And
Victimizing
and
yourself.
victimizing yourself, right? And so I still want to like honor being accountable, but also come having some compassion for that accountability as well. What does a good boss do? What does a good leader do when you make a mistake? Um, they don't come down on you with anger. They're like, this is a teaching moment. It's a mistake. Um, we're gonna learn from it, and you make sure it doesn't happen again, right? Um, how much more powerful is that? I've had good leaders, right? Do that with me when I've made a mistake in the past. How much more valuable is that lesson being taught in that way than when someone is coming at you with anger and then you get entrenched and you're like, well, you didn't teach me this and you didn't do that. So like, well, of course I was going to make a mistake. And like the ego, right? The ego
Mm,
comes back up when the anger comes into it. And so, yeah, when it comes to accountability, I think everyone can do better in order to build something better, in order to
yeah.
build this better world, this better society that we hope to see.
Yeah, and maintaining remembering that accountability is tied to awareness. So the higher our awareness becomes, just to use that language there, the higher we go, the better perspective we have. It's like, and there's more responsibility, there's more accountability when we have a greater amount of awareness. Uh, when we're acting out of ignorance, well, it's not an excuse for any behavior, and it's like the law. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse for breaking it. That's kind of at the same time we have to realize that when we're looking at ourselves, when we're looking at our younger selves, our former selves, the way that we showed up, we don't get anywhere by beating ourselves up. We have to remember, like, man, everyone, everywhere, at all times, including ourselves, we're doing our best given what we know, given our model of the universe, the way that we believe things work. And that's a big kind of statement. It was for me, to really kind of sit with that and think, really, like everybody on this planet right now is doing their best. Like there's a lot of examples of some not so great things, but if you really sit in meditative consideration, if you really contemplate these things, think about it, right? Like every kind of messed up thing I've done in my life, I was like, well, if things weren't going so well outwardly, that's because things were really not going so well inwardly, which was again a journey of awareness. Believing at the time that I was a victim of my circumstances and childhood, and being attached to that was creating those blind spots, which needed to be seen in order to release those beliefs, to get more clear and to raise the awareness, and then stop these destructive, negative, hurtful behaviors that were going on. But always holding compassion and recognizing that guilt and shame really have no place, because while they can be the things that initially bring our awareness to something, it needs to be cleaned in our consciousness. Holding on to them doesn't serve anything. Like, do I have to feel bad about something that I did, 10 years ago? Like, I can sit and seriously contemplate what happened and try and look at all perspectives, knowing, of course, that I'll never fully understand the full perspectives of other people that were involved, but I can do my best, which is all that we're ever asked of, which is all that is ever asked of us, and really allow it to pass, because we have to remember this comes down to forgiveness. And if we wish to forgive others, we have to be able to forgive ourselves. So again, the whole awareness journey, um, bringing in these concepts of awareness, accountability, responsibility, forgiveness. It's a big part of it.
Yeah. I think being of service, right, is just a good guiding light for me, right? And when we talk about responsibility, like when you're given responsibility over other people's lives, over yeah, like you're responsible for something, right? And what are the best examples of good responsibility I've seen in my life? It's when leaders are of service. Um, I think it's like when people see this stuff as a sort of burden, but like one that needs to be done, that's when the best outcomes are put forth. And being of service to like applying this to ourselves and then outwardly, right? It's like, what's the best way to be of service to myself? And what in order to serve others, right? It's like you can't truly serve others again, right? Putting yourself first if you haven't served yourself
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the most important point there is, if you truly wish to be of service to others, you gotta focus inwardly first, because how many, counselors are out there that need psychological help themselves? How many firefighters are out there who need saving themselves? How many, like all of these examples that are kind of these cliches that we've talked about before, because this is where we really have to examine the intuition and use the discernment, because a lot of the time the ego can bypass the more difficult work, which is the work on ourselves. That's the most challenging thing to do, and can bypass that and go, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go help someone else with this problem, right? So you end up helping someone, you end up trying to help someone else who has the exact same problem as you do, recognizing that, or not recognizing that it is just a projection of oneself, and in trying to help that other person without having first helped myself, for example, and figured it out myself, I still have those blind spots, so I'm not seeing the situation as clearly as I could be. And while I think I might be helping that other person, I'm really not. I'm just pushing them away, entrenching them in bad habits, and doing the same for myself. and I know this pretty well because I've done this multiple times, you know, and
Yeah.
it's really an egotistical it's really a very narcissistic thing because it's like I'm thinking that these examples I did with a couple of friends of mine, thinking that I was more healed than I was, and that I was in a position to offer advice to other people. And, recognizing later on that, like, that was really not the case. I had some massive blind spots, so it really to use that example just to highlight your point is, like, it really comes down to always going inward first, and if you're getting excited about, like, "I'm gonna take up a cause, I'm gonna go offer that person advice, I'm gonna get into this helping profession," whatever it is, try and get to the place of seeing that as something that should be like a big sign lit up in your mind to be like, "Hey, this is the indication that we should probably look inward first." Always, and, like, always coming back to that until it becomes so clear, until we're so clear with ourselves inwardly that we no longer even have to try to go outward. We don't have to go offer advice to someone. We don't have to go seek out a helping profession. We don't have to try and be of service. The service that we have rendered to ourselves, to our innermost selves, to come most truly into alignment with our center of self, that will then flow out automatically into a form of service that maybe your ego mind couldn't have predicted would happen in the first place, but it will be happening most authentically in that case. Um,
Yeah.
that has been my observation, but how does that sound to you? Does that
No,
make sense?
I see it constantly, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
people that are in professions where they're great helpers, but what are they missing within themselves, right? And that, what does that lead to? Probably like burnout. You probably burn out when you don't have a solid foundation of showing up for yourself. And they externalize, right? Like they externalize,
Yeah.
can't sit still, can't sit with themselves, can't sit in silence, can't contemplate, can't reflect. So it's like when they dive into the work, um, eh, work, there's a lot of, I see workaholics in my life. Not that it's, not that working hard is a bad thing or that's, it's not a good thing, but I see them diving into their work and then not addressing anything on their, you know,
Yeah.
inside or internally. And they're really good at what they do because it's, that's they can occupy their mind with the work, and just completely leave outside or, leave themselves to the wayside. It's there's no judgment. It's just, again, it's just something, a pattern I see. It's just something that I've seen in people.
Yeah, and that's, like, exactly me a few years ago. That was, I needed saving. I needed to work on myself as a person, but I was like, "No, I'll be a firefighter." And when my life was the most, when I was the most dysregulated, when my life was the most, chaotic and disorganized and just disturbed, that was when I was taking on
That's when
more
you
and
were
more work.
happiest.
That's when I was what?
Oh, like, on the surface, that's when you were, like, the most satisfied, the most content, was, like, when work's crazy and, like, because it's, like, you're busy, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, the
it's
work.
distracting
Yeah.
you from.
Yeah, so I'm talking about, like, the when my personal life, I should say, was the most in disarray, that was when I threw myself the most into my work. So I was taking on I was taking on, instructor positions, I was, volunteering more, I was taking on more responsibilities at work, and I was loving it. And because it was a
Yeah.
distraction, as you said, and it was, that was when I was most into it. And then I reached a point where I was like, "Wait, this is just everything in my life is super imbalanced." Definitely reaching a form of burnout. Like, it would be, if I'm being honest, it's pretty light. I don't wanna, like, characterize it as that because I know a lot of people have gone through something much more intense. But for me, it was kind of a burnout. It was like a spiritual burnout where I was just like, this isn't sustainable, and this isn't more so this isn't pointing me in the direction that I want to be going. And
Yeah.
but that was it. I was using work to avoid working on myself, and I had chosen a profession that was, a helping profession, and it was also stimulating because, every now and then a good adrenaline spike and that kind of thing. So it's real. The struggle is real, and the avoidance is real. Um, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and now I see
Yeah,
it. I'm like,
man.
man. Now I see it. I'm like, uh, I don't. I don't feel the need to go outward as much. Like I don't need to control it myself. I know, and again, it's like this, bringing it back to this intuition conversation. The more that I have focused on myself, put myself first, the opportunities to go outward, they just happen. They just materialize. I don't have to go searching for something. It just the opportunities arrive, and it's just really like, wow, this whole thing is connected. This really is a magical universe in which we're living in, and the undercurrent of that energy that's pushing it all forward is loving. That has been my direct experience now, so it's pretty awesome focusing on putting oneself first.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think that's a good probably a good place to cap
Oh,
episode 11 of Oneself. Again, if you like what you're hearing, if you get something out of this conversation, um, support us in all the ways that are free. Leave a comment, subscribe, like, engage with us. We're listening. We'd love to, if you have a question, ask us. We'd love to bring it up maybe in a future episode. Um, and then Adam, yeah, any closing thoughts for these topics? Big topics, man. This is a big topic episode,
yeah.
for
Yeah, it's exciting, and I mean, I'm sure we'll dive into many of these topics again, kind of, on that upward spiral, visiting them, as we go around, multiple different times, but, yeah, it's just keeping it simple always. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in trying to take all of the advice that's out there. There's so many great books, and so many great speakers out there who touch on these touch on a lot of the similar topics, but in slightly different ways. And sometimes it can get a little confusing, but say just always keep it simple. Remember, it comes back to how it feels, and if we're not sure how it's feeling, then focusing on the breath to get back into the body to be able to feel. So leave it there.
awesome. Catch you next time.
Right on.